If you buy a can of Red Bull, you'll probably pay about $3, or your local currency's equivalent. 9 cents of that goes towards paying for actually making the beverage you consume. The rest goes towards everything else, and as you undoubtedly know, in Red Bull's case, everything else is a tremendous amount. Some slim portion of that $3 goes towards paying for this, the company's headquarters. And this company headquarters is so far from normal. It's not in a major city, it's not even in a minor city, it's in the small Austrian mountain town of Fuschel am See. This is a town with one supermarket, 2 coffee shops, 1 bank, and 1 globally known multinational beverage enterprise. For one of the world's most recognizable brands, it's a remarkably tiny global HQ. It'd take no longer than 3 minutes to walk from one side of the property to the other, and it's bounded by an insurance broker on one side, residential homes on another, and a small hotel on the third. It's got no walls or fences or gatehouses. In fact, the public is even permitted to stroll through its gardens. There's no great strategic logic behind this location. Rather, Red Bull's co-founder, Dietrich Mateschitz, just liked Fuschel. He liked the privacy it afforded and the outdoors it gave access to, and he wanted to live there. The headquarters' small scale may be surprising compared to the global stature of the company, but less so when considering its actual operating structure. After all, at its core, Red Bull is a pretty simple company. It sells its traditional flavor, a sugar-free variant, a slightly different zero sugar version, then 14 different configurations of traditional and sugar-free fruit-flavored editions. Each of these is sold in a couple different sizes to fit different distribution channels and markets, but that's pretty much it. That's their entire product lineup. Compare this to their closest yet smaller competitor, Monster Energy, which sells so many different variants, seasonal, co-branded, and regional flavors, that there's not even a definitive count of how many different beverages they sell, though the rough estimate is around 150 at a given time. Adding to their simplicity, Red Bull doesn't even manufacture their own product. They contract Austrian fruit juice company Rausch to do it for them. In their early days, Red Bull hardly had the money to set up dedicated production facilities, but as part of the small Austrian business community, co-founder Mateschitz had connections to the Rausch family and convinced them to handle it. Today, little has changed in this arrangement but the scale, but even then, most of the world's Red Bull is still manufactured in the shadow of the Alps, and all of it by the fruit juice company. Their largest manufacturing site is here, in Ludesch, Austria. It's co-located with a Ball Corporation factory who's contracted to make Red Bull's bespoke cans, not used for any other beverage, while the direct rail and highway access allows for easy onward distribution logistics. A similar setup is replicated mere miles away, just over the border into Switzerland. It's got a Rausch factory, a Ball Corporation plant, along with direct rail and highway access too. Until 2021, every single can of Red Bull sold anywhere in the world came from one of these 2 sites, until the company worked with Rausch to start making product in Red Bull's biggest market, the US. So the setup was replicated a 3rd time in the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona. Rausch factory here, Ball Corporation plant here, rail access here, highway access there. Keeping a 17-product line with 2 manufacturing partners going just isn't that involved, which explains why the vast majority of people at Red Bull do not deal with making Red Bull. Rather, they focus on what $1 of every Red Bull sale goes towards, convincing you to buy a can. From its beginning, Red Bull was more a marketing company than a drinks company. Prior to co-founding it, Dietrich Mateschitz worked at a consumer goods multinational called Blendax as the marketing manager for one of their lines of toothpaste. This often took him to Asia, and at the time, the 70s and 80s, energy drinks were already widespread across the continent despite being nearly unheard of in the West. On one of Mateschitz's trips, as the fable goes, he was sitting at the bar of the Mandarin Oriental Hong Kong, chatting with fellow travelers and flipping through the latest edition of Newsweek. Inside, he found an article highlighting that Japan's single largest taxpayer was energy drinks manufacturer Lipovitan. Details get a bit fuzzy and conflicting on what exactly happened next, but what we know for sure is that Mateschitz hated his job, he wanted to start his own company, and these factors combined with his new awareness of the fortunes found in energy drinks brought him to TC Pharmaceutical Industries, the Thai manufacturers of a drink called Krating Dang, or in English, Red Bull. Sensing opportunity, the Austrians struck a deal with the Thai manufacturer. They'd each invest $500,000 into a new company, Red Bull GmbH, that'd reformulate and rebrand the product into one targeted at Western consumers. Krating Dang, like most Asian energy drinks at the time, was sold in small glass bottles and was intended to be consumed more as a shot. It was not about its taste, it was about its function. Mateschitz spent the next few years reformulating this baseline into a drink intended more for sipping. He wanted something that tasted less like medicine and more like soda, so he added carbonation, reduced sweetness, introduced a touch of acidity, and expanded the default format into larger 250ml cans. Come April 1st, 1987, after a prolonged process gaining regulatory approval to sell the novel product, Red Bull hit store shelves in its new home country of Austria. It was initially positioned as premium and elusive, sold for far more than the average soda. Mateschitz went around and convinced bars one by one to stock it. Its novelty intrigues people, and bartenders would push it as a mixer to work with vodka or Jaeger. Mateschitz also guerrilla marketed it in the places and contexts he thought Red Bull would be most useful. He'd hand it out for free at university campuses during exam weeks, businesses that late-night taxi drivers frequented, anywhere where people would struggle yet want to stay awake. All his efforts were compounded by strong word-of-mouth spread throughout the small country. The new product was splashy, and it made for a good topic of conversation. In its first full year of operations, Red Bull sold 1.2 million cans, then it followed that up with 1.7 the next, and quickly reached profitability, the hurdle every entrepreneur dreams of. But after jumping over this first hurdle, Mateschitz only saw the next one. Red Bull had to expand in his mind, but he simply just wasn't allowed to. They were struggling to gain regulatory approval in any viable market, as national regulators were wary to approve a product with taurine in particular, a food additive that lacked any long-term consumption research, fueling legitimate fears that frequent consumption of it could be harmful. Hungary and Slovenia would allow it, and the company did expand there, but the wealthier, larger markets to the west just wouldn't budge. But then, Mateschitz just simply got incredibly lucky. On January 1st, 1993, the European Union launched its single market. Now, all member states would remove almost all trade barriers, meaning their economies would effectively morph into one. As part of this, every product approved for sale in one EU country was usually, with some caveats, approved for sale in all EU member countries. The caveats did slow launch in many of these markets, but as they were progressively sorted out, France was the last EU country to allow the company in 2008. But all in all, Red Bull's prevalence expanded massively in a short period of time following the 1993 liberalization. Now, they just needed to convince people to buy it. Going bar to bar wouldn't work anymore. Mateschitz had to find a way to get a lot of people to hear about Red Bull, but he had already actually come up with the answer. It was late summer 1985. The Austrian Grand Prix was on at the Österreichring, now known as the Red Bull Ring. Austrian driver Gerhard Berger was in the midst of his second season, picking up decent points in the midfield, when a random guy, Dietrich Mateschitz, walked up to him and pitched his novel business idea to sell caffeinated soda to the masses. Mateschitz offered $10,000 to Berger in exchange for carrying his drink around in the paddock, using a branded water bottle, and some other small obligations. And even though this was a borderline offensively small sum for a Formula One sponsorship deal, Berger genuinely needed the money, so he agreed. With this, he became the first of thousands upon thousands of storied Red Bull athletes. This deal produced images like this. These images were how Red Bull got its message out to the world. It was that this is a high-performance athlete, their job is to be the best at whatever they do, and they drink this beverage that helps them perform at that level. Every time a high-performance athlete was pictured with the Red Bull logo, the subconscious of everyone that saw that image started to associate Red Bull with performance. When those people wanted to perform, they would remember that Red Bull was what the professionals used to perform. Then they'd buy it, Red Bull would earn $3, and they'd use one of those to do this all again. Still at a somewhat moderate scale, Red Bull couldn't afford to sponsor the best of the best in the very biggest sports, so they started small, into the sports that Mateschitz himself was fixated with, and focused on having the biggest impact in niche and underdeveloped sports, particularly those involving adrenaline, risk-taking, and highly visual moments. Importantly, Red Bull almost always sponsored individual athletes rather than teams, events, or leagues. They focused on finding the best of the best in whatever they do. Athletes like Jessica Fox. She's the world's definitive preeminent canoe slalomist, having earned 3 Olympic gold medals and 4 world championship titles. Or freestyle motocross rider Robbie Madison, who broke the motorcycle jump world record in 2007, surpassing a distance even Evel Knievel himself said was impossible and landing at 322 feet or 98 meters. And even in bigger sports, the company developed strategies to compound their dollars' effects by finding less than preeminent athletes who attracted disproportionate attention. Tom Pidcock, for example, is a cyclist who is not at the top of the top in any one discipline, but earns high name recognition based on the fact that he's near the top in both road cycling and mountain biking, an almost unheard of combination. He's still crossed Tour de France finish lines in first and won an Olympic gold medal, and whenever he's contractually allowed to, he's wearing pieces of gear adorned with the Red Bull logo. In order to attract top-tier talent, Red Bull not only offered a top-tier package of living stipends, travel budgets, and entry fee reimbursement, but they also built a network of top-tier coaches, sports scientists, nutritionists, and rehab trainers housed in top-notch training centers in Austria and LA, or at well-funded training camps in whatever locations are relevant for a given sport. The degree of support their athletes get is often far, far above what is typical in the niche sports they touch. But as marketing spend grew through time, Red Bull had the ability to compound its awareness through compounding its influence in the chosen extreme, splashy, yet small sports. They started to not only sponsor individual athletes, but transform entire sports. You see, larger sports have governing bodies: FIFA for soccer, World Athletics for running, ITF for tennis. These institutions set rules, standards, and put on high-level, often championship competition in their respective domains. Niche sports often lack these governing bodies, meaning competition is clunky with different groups working in different, sometimes incompatible ways, leading to a lack of progression and opportunities at the top end of each sport. Red Bull would enter these sports and produce the best funded events with the biggest prizes, immediately attracting top-level talent, becoming the event they build their seasons around, and incentivizing those across the sport to make their style of competition compatible with the way Red Bull did things, naturally standardizing the sport. In cliff diving, they produce the Cliff Diving World Series, the definitive world championship for the sport. In freeride mountain biking, the company puts on Red Bull Rampage, once again, the preeminent event in the sport. The same goes for big air kiteboarding with Red Bull King of the Air, the biggest athletes, the most media, the most attention. In parkour and slacklining and enduro and more, it's the same. Red Bull's events play a massive central role. This means that in many of the world's most visually interesting sports, the best athletes take their biggest risks producing the most captivating moments in front of a Red Bull logo. People performing at their highest level while the Red Bulls are seared into your brain. Eventually, the energy drink company had accumulated enough money to have a big impact in a big sport, and the place to start was obvious. They'd compete in Matishic's favorite sport. It was time to enter Formula One. Conveniently, Ford was exiting it. They were losing hundreds of millions of dollars a year, they weren't winning, and corporate just no longer considered it worth it. Being bad at making cars was not exactly a strong marketing message for a car company, so the team was slated to close up shop at the end of 2004. Formula One, the league, wouldn't automatically allow new entrants without a lengthy application process, so it was far easier for Mateschitz to buy Ford's team, and considering how much money it was losing, Ford offered it, including all its infrastructure like staff, a factory, and an engine contract, for just a single dollar. Red Bull then invested a ton of money, hired a winning combination of team principal Christian Horner and aerodynamicist Adrian Newey, and it worked. By 2009, they won their first race, and just a year after, they won both the Drivers' and the Constructors' Championships, starting a 4-year streak of winning both. Their first of 2 golden eras, the second including 4 Drivers' and 3 Constructors' Championships. While Formula One might not be the biggest sport in many countries, its uniquely global reach still makes it one of the world's very biggest spectator sports leagues, driving just a simply massive amount of attention towards the words Red Bull, especially when they're winning. Red Bull truly flipped the script on how marketing works. Rather than creating a fictional narrative involving their product to play on TV, they manufactured real-world moments displaying or implying their product at use. They built a global, stunningly legitimate athletics machine to manufacture moments the world would crave to see. And they managed to do so while being a legitimate force for good. Red Bull, the overall company, hardly is a net positive for the world. It's hard to find merit in driving up caffeine and sugar consumption rates, but if you set the public health costs aside, there are many, many corners of the world of athletics where their influence has meaningfully improved the lives of athletes. For that, there are countless admirable, influential athletes who feel genuine goodwill towards the company. Their passions are better because of this energy drinks company. This means that plenty of people, both athletes and fans, don't think of Red Bull as an energy drinks company, they think of them as an institution. This institutionality has, for decades now, cemented Red Bull's position of market supremacy. They are the energy drinks company. Everyone else is just those who attempt to emulate.